When reading informational texts, we are going to be presented with facts about a particular topic. In some cases, the author will provide his or her opinions on the topic at hand. In this lesson, we are going to discuss the difference between the two, as well as look at some tips and strategies to help us identify those statements that are fact versus those that are opinions. Understanding and analyzing any text that we read is going to require critical thinking skills. As we read informational text, we will need to examine the statements made by the author and use those to determine what the author is trying to tell us. With that information, we can make informed decisions on our own based on the information presented. Effective critical thinking is going to require us to determine between the author's facts, opinions, and generalizations. So let's take a look at the difference between these three words. Facts are statements that can be proven by observation or research. A statement of fact is something that is definitely true, and we know that it's true because it can be backed up by evidence. We can do our own research and determine that the statement is actually a fact. A couple of examples of facts are presented here on the screen. In the spring, the days grow warmer. And Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States. Well, if these are facts, then they can be proven. So how do we prove that these statements truly are factual? The first one can be proven by examining documented weather and temperature data. So we can look at the historic weather data during the traditional springtime, and we can clearly see that the days do grow warmer. In the second statement, we can research documented historical data to prove that there was a man named Abraham Lincoln who was in fact the 16th President of the United States. Opinions are statements that express feelings, beliefs, or personal judgments. These are different from facts in that they cannot actually be proven. However, opinions can be supported with facts. When we read an opinion, it is up to us to agree or disagree. Tips to help us determine whether or not a statement is an opinion is to, one, look for signal words. Words such as think, believe, best, worst, wonderful, or should. Some examples of opinions would be spring is the most beautiful season. Another will be Abraham Lincoln was the greatest president in American history. Well, how do we know these are opinions? In the first sentence, we have the signal words most beautiful. When we put that together, we can see that this is an opinion. Now, some people may believe that spring is the most beautiful season. We could have someone else who believes that, fall's better. Or maybe winter is the most beautiful season. It is a matter of personal preference. In the second sentence, Abraham Lincoln was the greatest president in American history. The word greatest clues us in that this is an opinion. Some people may think that Abraham Lincoln wasn't the greatest president in American history. They could argue that George Washington was the greatest, or Thomas Jefferson, or maybe a more modern president such as John F. Kennedy. Again, opinions are matters of personal preference. Generalizations are also statements of opinion, but how they differ is in that they allow for no exceptions. They are making purely objective statements that cannot be looked at any other way. There's no other options. A generalization is a judgment made by an individual. It is not a proven statement. Given the fact that there are no exceptions to a generalization, these are mostly going to be false. And we can use signal words as well to determine whether or not a statement is a generalization. Some of these signal words could be all, always, or never. Let's take a look at a couple of examples of generalizations. Never trust a tall man. Another would be all students should learn French. Why are these generalizations? Well, let's think about it. Never is our signal word in the first sentence. Why is this a generalization? Because there's no relationship between trustworthiness and height. Just because someone is tall does not mean that they are not trustworthy. In the second sentence, all is our signal word. And we know this is generalization because there's no real necessity for each and every student in the world to learn French. Before we close, let's take a look at a few examples and determine whether these are facts, opinions, or generalizations. Our first statement, Pittsburgh is a beautiful city. Well, is this a fact, an opinion, or a generalization? In this case, it is an opinion. The author believes that Pittsburgh is beautiful. However, someone else could have a different opinion. Maybe Pittsburgh to them could be a dirty city. Maybe they might feel that another city or town is more beautiful than Pittsburgh. Regardless, this simply comes down to being a personal preference. Pittsburgh is located at the point where three rivers join. Is this a fact, an opinion, or a generalization? Well, if we look at the statement, we can affirm that this is a fact. This is something that can be proven by looking at a map, doing a Google search, or using some other source of research method to determine whether or not this is true. I'd rather swim in a lake than a river. Well, we can clearly see that this is an opinion. Some people may prefer swimming in a river. Could very well be that there are no lakes in the local area and the only places to swim will be a river. And then we may have others who feel that swimming in a lake or a river is dirty. They would much rather swim in a swimming pool. Once again, it's an opinion because this is a statement of personal preference. Cities are always more interesting than small towns. Fact, opinion, or generalization? Well, we have a signal word, always. When we see this, we know that this is a generalization. Do you feel that cities are more interesting than small towns? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Always leaves no exceptions. This statement is not true for me because I find small towns to be more interesting. I'm not going to say they're always more interesting, but I prefer small towns to cities. Pittsburgh has more bridges than any other city in the world. What do you think? Fact, opinion, or generalization? This statement is actually a fact, and we can prove it, as you see that I did at the bottom of the screen, with a Google search. As of 2019, the city of Pittsburgh has 446 bridges, 3 more than Venice, Italy. So, unless Venice has built 4 bridges within the last few months, we can say that yes, Pittsburgh does have more bridges than any other city in the world. Therefore, this statement is, in fact, provable. Reading informational passages will require critical thinking, and we need to use those critical thinking skills to determine whether or not the author is presenting us with facts, opinions, or generalizations. To recap, a fact is a statement that can be proven with research and/or observation. We can go to resources and determine whether or not the statement is true. On the other hand, opinions are statements that cannot necessarily be proven because they express feelings, beliefs, or personal judgments. You and I may have different opinions on a particular topic. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are false just due to the fact that they are opinions. We may have facts that back up our opinions, but they are still personal feelings nonetheless. A generalization is a special kind of opinion that allows for no exceptions. So if we make statements like never trust a tall man, or people always go to the store on Thursdays, these statements allow no other option. And usually, almost always, those statements are going to be false.